Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Architektura Powinna podcast, and I'm not joking, this episode will be from the very beginning till the very end in English. And I believe it's going to be a big enrichment for you, my dear Polish audience, but also a good start for non-Polish audience to join at least this episode, but I hope also for some more English episodes in the future. My name is Klaudia Lachcik. I'm coming from Poland and currently living in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, working here as an architect in a Dutch office. So maybe it makes me not an architect, but it makes me an ontwerper architectuur, to be precise and to shine bright with my Dutch language skills. Anyway, today I have for you a conversation with Ondrej Chybik from the office Chybik+Kristof. That's the name of the office that is based in Prague and Brno in Czechia and in Bratislava in Slovakia. The office, the studio Chybik+Kristof was founded over a decade ago by two very talented designers. One is coming from Czechia, another from Slovakia, and that's their place of architectural playground, of architectural experiment and their projects. After 10 years of the practice, the office consists of over 50 multidisciplinary architects. And I read very beautiful sentence from their website, which goes like that. The office was born out of the ambition to offer more and better than the brief demanded. That statement already describes sort of the principle of their work and the project. So that's also a good time to present you some of the most recognizable project of Chybik+Kristof office. For example, it's Zvonarka Central Bus Terminal. That's the latest finished build project of theirs, a self-initiated project, which makes it very interesting. And it's an example of refurbishment. It had the brutalist structure, and the challenge was to implement the new design and preserve the structure that represents certain values. Very interesting. So next time you visit Czechia, it's also the message for myself, to be honest. I would like to definitely check out those three projects that I'm presenting here for you. The second one is Lachover Winery, one of the very few, maybe even the only one, building in the outskirts, as Ondrej later mentions. That's completely outside the city, very beautiful form, light and very elegant winery with a usable rooftop. The third one that I would like to mention is a gallery of furniture. Maybe for some of you, even the most recognizable. Believe me, you want to Google this one. It's a showroom for which the facades are made of the chairs that the client's company produce. And that's also an example of an adaptive reuse office building. What do we talk about with Ondrej Chybik? Well, first, little introduction, how the both architects met and found the office together. Were they friends from the very beginning, or maybe rivals? How did Ondrej understand the evolution of the profession from the study time and the first job experience? What was his state of mind after graduation? That's usually a very important moment in the profession, like how you get the first commissions. What's the story behind the first build project? And of course, we talk about the main topic from the title of the podcast. So what's the role of the architect nowadays? What's the definition? Who's this mysterious person? What skills or features does the architect should have? And what kind of characteristic does Ondrej have? We talked about a very interesting topic for architects and the very brave statement especially from the architects, which is to build less. There's quite a lot about the transformation or wild 90s times, and the problem with architecture that it's maybe a little bit too modern, that it was just built and we are not sure what part of the buildings from 90s should be preserved and what can be demolished, what is the true value of these buildings. So there's a lot about the challenges. The topic of demolitions also appears in the conversation, and it really reminded me about the latest Pritzker Prize winners. For non-architecture related listeners, the Pritzker Prize is equivalent, at least that's what we would like to say, of a Nobel Prize in architecture, but certainly is the most important appreciation in the architectural world. And the latest winners were French architects. And as there are French names, let me use the help of my friend here.
Anne Lacaton et Jean-Philippe Vassal.
The architects said that the transformation is the opportunity of doing more and better with what is already existing. And they mentioned that the demolition is a decision of easiness and short term. It's a waste of many things, a waste of energy, a waste of material, a waste of a history. Moreover, it has a very negative social impact. For us, it's an act of violence. Very important words to fulfill our topic of demolitions. And now, of course, it's time to start our conversation with Ondrej Chybik. Today I'm talking with Ondrej Chybik from a very multidisciplinary Slovakian Czech office called Chybik+Kristof. Today we're going to have a quite challenging subject to talk about because it will be about the role of architects nowadays. But before we start this main topic, could you please first introduce yourself and the office?
Dzień dobry, Claudia.
Dzień dobry.
Hello, everyone. That's pretty much all I can say in your beautiful language. I will correct you from scratch because we are Czech and Slovak office because our two branches are in the Czech Republic, in the capital, in Prague, and in Brno, and the third branch is based in Slovakia. And I'm Czech, and my business partner Chybik+Kristof, he's Slovak. Actually, we were born in Czechoslovakia before splitting those two countries, so we are kind of Czechoslovaks.
It's still same sort of culture. You have a lot of links, so
yeah, definitely.
Yes, and tell us a little bit about the office in general. How did it started? How the idea of collaborating with your partner Michal started?
It's already a decade ago. It's a little bit terrifying because
time passes.
We thought that we still young architects, but we are not the youngest architects anymore because even we started our practice right after graduation in 2011, 2010/11, let's say. It's already 10 years. So the start was that we met at the Faculty of Architecture in Brno. We were schoolmates, but also kind of rivals, I would say. The common feature of two of us was that we applied in as much as possible architecture competitions within the study times. And once there was a competition where Michal won and his team, and sometimes there was a competition where my team and I won, and it was quite funny. Like we are knowing about each other, but we are not like super friends, we are really rivals. And then we went we spent 2 years as Erasmus students and then internships. Michal been to Bjarke Ingels Group in Copenhagen and spent also a year in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
I did my Erasmus in Graz in Austria. And then I worked for a year in Viennese studio PPAG. And then suddenly, actually 2010, there was a Venice Biennale of Architecture in Italy, in Venice.
Mm-hmm.
And we met suddenly in the bars, 3 o'clock in the morning, just drinking last shots. And while talking about our experiences from abroad, we just realized that architecture is not a one-man show. It's not about him or myself. but it's about to teaming up with the best colleagues and to try to create the best together. And I think without those experiences from the offices in Copenhagen or in Vienna, it would be impossible to get this humble and very, I would say, efficient understanding of architect's role and architect's profession.
Otherwise, you could stay the competitors forever. Who knows? Then you decided to set up the office, the new studio. But before that, like, I want to get back to the time in between studies and the first working experience. Was your first working experience something that you were expecting during your studies, or were there some surprises?
I think that it wasn't brand new for Michal or for me, because we worked every summer for some different architect in Brno and for small local studios. And I would say it was an evolution of understanding of the profession, because even after the first year of our studies, we were happy to work on some real projects in those Brno-based studios. Then the international experience was different in the topics we were dealing with, and also the international environment was for us very surprising. Then we understood that there's no such a difference in the architecture language in Brno and in the rest of the world.
But what was the most surprising for you when you started to really work in the offices?
I think there was not such a super surprising thing. Very surprising thing began after graduation, because then we were on our own. We had enough work for anybody else.
Hmm.
We are very spoiled and not humble enough to be honest to work for somebody else. It was like, okay, now we are architects and we have to set up our own studio and try to get some commission. The courage was enormous, the experience zero, but we had luck and we got a commission and we also won some competition, and it was actually beginning of our studio.
How did you get this first commissions?
Actually, there were two first commissions. The first one was a competition in Slovakia. We won a competition for some master plan close to Bratislava,
Hmm.
and even there was no follow up because the client was kind of not strong enough to make it happen in terms of construction, etc. It was a signal that our conceptual approach and our understanding of the architecture and urban design could lead to a real contract later on. So, and even we got some prize money, and we had a little budget for hiring first people and trying hard, but there was something like first embryo of our studio.
Hmm.
And the first real commission came out not because of the competition, but it was related to the competitions, because we did lots of competitions during our study times. There was a company which was constantly every year making a student competition for modular architecture, the Koma company based in the Czech Republic. We won like one of those students student one, and after graduation we just came to the owner of the company and we offered them, because we knew that they know us a little bit because of the winning entry from like 5 years before we met them again.
Hmm.
And this knowledge of our ambition to work with their products led to the first real contract. They were planning to build a modular canteen. They tried to make an architecture out of their modules, and they gave us this opportunity to design this building for themselves. And we made a design, and it's built. It's actually our first built building. The interesting thing was that it wasn't for a family house for a friend or an uncle, but it was a commercial contract. It was building for approximately 1 million euros. It was pretty fast because the modular architecture has one very interesting feature that it's very fast.
Mm-hmm.
This moment of building first or completing first building is always very important for any architect, because without completions you could have dozens and millions of renderings and models, etc. But completion is completion.
Otherwise, you just stack your projects in the drawer, or actually in the
Yeah.
cloud nowadays, and that's it. But that's pretty amazing that for the canteen, which doesn't sound like very sophisticated function, suddenly the client had this idea to make it modular, to put this idea into the project itself, into the building, right? I would expect from the canteen to like really have a little budget for the project. So that's amazing. How do you see this project now from the perspective from some more experience? Do you see it more positive as this first completion, which is very important for architects, or you rather right now you see it as a stack of I don't know, some remarks, you would change this, you would change that, you see it from the like problems perspective?
I would say both, because it's with any other project, even the most recent completed projects are, in our opinion, there's always a lot of to develop better, or there's always a space for improvements. We are naturally very critical regarding everything, but on the other hand, the canteen works, and we changed also the culture of the within the organization, because the workers have a nice place to spend a lunchtime. Works also as assembly hall for some events within the company, and I'm always very happy while visiting the company that this building is full of life.
Hmm.
And I think that should be an ambition of any architect. And we're gonna talk about later what's the role of an architect. But even in this first small scale, from today's perspective, small scale project, we achieved some things which are important for and maybe essential for our work.
Yes, and I believe the definition of architect also evolves and changes, and for everyone is somebody different. So maybe we can start with that question, like how would you describe this job in general?
I would say there's actually one or two words I would highlight, and that's the responsibility and activity. That's something what could be. It shouldn't lead to activism, because that's radical in my understanding of that word.
Hmm.
But to be very active and to have open eyes regarding living environment we're living in is absolutely essential, and that's absolutely necessary to let architects think and talk and work regarding such topics. Responsibility, it's something what is I hope natural for any architect, but also responsibility has the word has a large scale of understanding.
Hmm.
I would say the responsibility regarding the society, environment, and many other things like a budget and the structure at the end, and functionality, etc., etc. So those two things are crucial in our understanding, and we can talk about them hours and hours.
Yes, that's true. I mean, sometimes I also see the architect as a mediator in the middle of the other parties, clients, advisors, and experts, and everyone else, that maybe the architect, especially in some parts, bring all of this knowledge together into the project. That's why, in my opinion, sometimes it's so hard to make this definition, because it can differ. It depends on the project. It can differ because it constantly changes. It can differ because we have also many types of architects. The responsibility is definitely one of the most important assets, and these characteristics. Should the architect be emotional, for example?
I think the process is sometimes emotional, but I think it's not the strength.
Hmm.
It's I would say the architect should be very rational. And if it's the opposite of emotional, I am emotional person in personal life, but I'm trying to be as rational as possible in the professional life.
Hmm.
We are not the actors. We are architects, and responsibility and activity is maybe sometimes against emotions, because you have to negotiate with many subjects, and not just negotiate, but you have to be able to open the topics. That's the I would call it activism in the very humble way, because to open the topic and to negotiate with all the parties and to achieve a result, you have to be very rational and very open-minded.
What about being stubborn?
Stubborn, you have to be stubborn as well, but open for any dialogue. On the other hand,
Hmm.
that's like
All right, then maybe not emotional, but sensitive about certain topics.
yes. That's the good word.
You're working at the university as well. You're working with the students. Are you able to say what kind of characteristics and features are good while being a student in order to become later an architect?
Yes, I would say proactivism and not be lazy, because I'm always surprised how much time students need to produce something what an architect in after graduation could produce within one day.
Also, that's the difference, maybe, between the studies time and later in the office that you experienced, and you've seen
Yes,
this
efficiency.
efficiency.
Efficiency and understanding that time is the fourth dimension.
From my experience, what I notice is, like, during your studies, you try to send only finished product, and that's it. Usually it's like from one deadline to another, but it's like the finished project that you present. During the office life and experience, you have to keep sending updates, which are usually, in most of the cases, unfinished products. That's the big difference that I think everyone at one point needs to learn, that it's never finished. Like, from your perspective, do you think the role of the architect changed in recent days? You mentioned that the office is already 1 decade on the market.
There are slightly different topics than a decade ago, I would say, because the trends are shifting from the buildings as sculptures to the buildings as part of environment.
Hmm.
And it's maybe a process of 25 years, where the architecture is not considered only as a collection of the most beautiful windows and marbles, but it's considered more as the building and the environment which is created by the building.
That doesn't mean that the era of the star architects finished.
I don't know if the name of an architect is something what's maybe, in my opinion, a little bit disrespectful for those architects and those companies which are trying hard and are constantly achieving the best. I think even those companies and those architects are still leading the architecture debate, and are shifting also their opinions about the architecture into more contemporary topics. So I think that's completely different thing. what you said. I think the big shift is in terms of even the society is changing. I don't mean the only Corona crisis, but entire environmental crisis and unaffordability in major cities and social inequality and the role of women's. I think it's not just that we're gonna forget architects is a male profession. It's not anymore. Definitely, in our studio there's like 50-50 men and women, but everything what society is fighting for and trying to improve is reflected through the architecture as well, because architecture is very essential part of society, and society is living in the architecture, is using the architecture. The cities are built by urban designers and architects, and once the society is changing, the cities has to have to reflect it. So, and I know that some things could be trends. Maybe sometimes it's even hypocriticism, because those trends are very dangerous. That the proclamations of those things could lead into the far left or right actions. But if we're gonna skip those extremes,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna be somewhere in between, and we as architects will carefully listen what society is talking about. At least we could reflect it, and we could help to develop some better future, even the in our profession.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that right now we are heading towards like more environmental friendly architecture. It means, I suppose, that the society becomes more environmental conscious. What does it mean, environmentally friendly building for you and for your office? Is this one of the principle of your work?
First of all, I want to highlight that I'm a little bit tired of the word sustainable,
Mhm.
because it's becoming a claim of any project that it's sustainable, and I think it's absolutely natural that actually any design we produce should be sustainable without highlighting that it's sustainable.
Overused.
Overused and too commercial and used by even extremely unsustainable companies. They just claiming that they're sustainable, but they're not. So I will never call any our building that is part of sustainable design, even they are sustainable, I
Mhm.
would say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like with the eco word or green
Yeah.
building. And yeah, when something is too many times repetitive, then it loses its meaning.
But on the other hand, the environmental friendly things are crucial, and I would love to highlight few topics which are very interesting, and we are working on those topics in the studio. And that's, for instance, a topic of demolitions and the reuse of the buildings, the reuse of the materials, the reuse of energies. And our claim is rather to demolish, to improve as better and as much as possible,
So to
because
build less.
and to build less.
That's interesting statement from the architect, right?
That's an interesting statement from the architect, but the transformations becoming more and more interesting, because of course we are building and we are constantly designing new buildings, because it's also a part of our profession. And I don't want to claim that we are not building new buildings, but I definitely like the topic of transformations, because there is several good things. The first thing is, while transformation of the existing, you don't need to deal with a demolition garbage. How to say,
Yeah, leftovers, materials.
leftover,
Yes. Yeah.
definitely
Hmm.
leftover material. We always trying to keep as much as possible. The second thing is that the buildings are mostly built inside the cities, and there's no need for a growth of the footprint of the cities, because that's, in our opinion, one of the major topics in the urban scale, that the cities are constantly growing into the nature, and this suburbanization and all related aspects of suburbanization are very, very, very problematic, and are one of the biggest issue we have to care, because if we're gonna build our buildings everywhere, we're gonna lose our nature, and without the nature, I don't want to live on such a world. So back to the topic of the repurposed or reused buildings. That's major. Those buildings exist, and you are not building on the completely new footprint outskirts of the city. And there's many other aspects, and we can talk about the value of the buildings, because each building was built in a certain period of the time, and each period of the time is a part of our history.
Mm-hmm.
And to demolish for instance, buildings from 60s, 70s, 80s in our countries is like to pretend that the age of previous era doesn't exist. It's also like to demolish part of our memory, part of our history. So all those things are very interesting, and we already completed 3 projects, so within past decade, which are reflecting those things. And at the end, we are extremely happy that we had opportunity to practice on those things, because if I will count like build projects, it's almost like a quarter of our build projects are transformations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely a big issue for our studio, and I don't want to work only on those topics, because architecture is extremely wide. But the transformation topic is a topic I want to definitely highlight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is the mission of the office then to have more and more the transformation projects?
I like the topic a lot, and there could be a very boring. It could be very boring topic to make a reconstruction of a castle, for instance, in the very historic way, with all those like historical look like facades and old windows. But there could be very, very beautiful topics, as we did in Brno. We made a refurbishment of Zvonačka bus station, the bus station from 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't kind of beautiful building. It wasn't kind of beautiful space. It was very technocratic, but it has a quality, and it was a part of the architect's approach of the period. So we took an opportunity to make it better and nicer while keeping the original quality. And it was very interesting how to take the best out of the past, and how to transform the space into the 21st century.
Yeah. Well, and of course, the transformation, the reuse of the space, it doesn't mean reconstructing. Sometimes it might mean if it was very important, but in most of the cases, repurposing, the reuse of the space means, getting the value of the structure, the existing structure,
Exactly.
getting the most out of it, and maybe to show it in the new way. But that's always this struggle and the big discussion, where is this border, right? Of course, another wide topic is the newest monuments, the newest buildings that maybe sometimes from our perspective, from our age, from 2021, we don't see everything. We have, for example, in Poland, a lot of buildings from 90s that represent the postmodernism, funky, colorful shapes, not very posh, expensive materials, weird colors, weird forms. But still, there is a big discussion like, do we demolish this building to build something completely new, or we keep, even though right now it doesn't fit to the street, to the alley, to the urban tissue. But maybe that's the characteristic of the postmodernism.
Exactly, exactly. I will jump into it because I think we can sort out the buildings into two groups. The first was done by great architects. That's the most sustainable approach because once it's done by great architect, there should be preserved. There should be preserved because even it's not the most modern approach, and maybe it's very controversial.
Hmm.
The as you mentioned, the colorful things, but if that's done by a good name, proven by the time, they should be definitely preserved as a part of the evolution. Then the rest is done by non-architect, and it's also a matter of the materials, if there's a quality in the materials or not. And I think we can quite easily evaluate what has a value to keep for the society, and what could be uh, transformed massively.
Hmm. Yes, but well, of course, sometimes it's also not that clear if the designer architect was great or not, if the name is already, especially the building from 90s, that like the architect is not really evaluated yet.
But there were there were some names. There was Philip Johnson, right, in the U.S. He was a postmodern, or Robert Venturi.
Venturi,
They
yeah.
were postmodernism. They were like pioneers of the postmodernism, and
Hmm.
they had some schoolmates, and they were teaching some students, and the students were producing such architecture. So maybe I will, I will not preserve everything because there was a lot of mess in that age, even as the society was very messy. There was lots of corruption and lots of opportunism, and it was we call it here in the Czech Republic like wild 90s.
Hmm.
And those wild 90s were producing lots of non-quality things in the society, and even in the buildings, because the buildings are representatives of the wild 90s.
Hmm.
But even in the wild 90s, there were good businessmen and also good architects producing good architecture.
Yes, yes, and even the buildings from wild 90s can have the value. Maybe not, maybe sometimes it's aesthetic, maybe sometimes it's historic, scientific, who knows? That's of course case by case. Also another role of the architect, big part of it, it's the activism that you mentioned, to be active, but then I understand this as having an influence on the space, on the society, on the environment. Do you feel like this is a big part of the role of the architects? And the second part of the question, like, is it decreasing or actually rising, this influence of architects nowadays?
I think it's like chick.
Na zdrowie.
Jesus. Zdraví, děkuju. I think architects should communicate. That's the first thing. We are responsible for the materialized world, right? That are the buildings, that are the streets, squares, public spaces, parks, etc. We have to talk to the public. We have to try as much as possible explain what's good, what's not good enough, and our influence in this case should be, in my opinion, quite high because without understanding of the society, we gonna sail alone on empty sea. That's the first thing, and I think the communication is improving a lot, and even the uncommercial communication is happening a lot because I think even the magazines as Design or Arch Daily are sometimes trying to open discussion about important topics within the society, within the architecture. So I think it's increasing I hope it's increasing the awareness about the society. What is today architect's role? That the architect is not only a guy who's responsible for the most beautiful marble or the greatest shape of the window, but is an figure who should preserve the urban environment and on the same hand the nature.
But isn't it more like a rather a wish rather than reality? Because from the other hand, I feel that actually this role it's being reduced, and sometimes you can make the opinion that actually the architect is responsible for like smaller and smaller part of the whole process of the project, and it's more described as a form giver rather than this ideal participant of every segment of the process.
It's a matter of the ambition of an architect because we have completely different experience. We are constantly pushing forward those topics.
Hmm.
We are talking about those topics into the public. I'm very glad that we have even completions in those topics, that we do not sort projects regarding the scale or the income to the studio. We are sorting them regarding the topics, and the topics are very diverse. We are becoming also very picky regarding the topics. We're gonna never design an shopping center on the field.
So
Never
also
ever.
picky about the clients, or at least having influence on the clients.
Definitely, definitely, because many of our projects are happening inside the city. Actually, almost every project is happening inside the city, except the winery, which in our understanding of the typology could be in the middle of vineyards. But we do work on large scale developments and transformations of former brownfields while keeping some old existing buildings while adding new forms and new structures. We evolving those existing brownfields by some new life. But that's the topic. That's the transformation of part of the city inside the city, and that's absolutely great thing.
Hmm.
The opposite is the shopping center on the field. It's completely wrong actually, and we're gonna never ever design such a thing because in our understanding of urban qualities, you shouldn't build anything on the field what is only for commercial purpose, like shops and restaurants. Shops and restaurants should be placed in the city and should help to make the city alive.
Not to close every resident in the one big building and
Yeah,
empty the
exactly.
streets.
So we are definitely trying hard to find those topics, and as a practicing architects, to make them happen in the real world.
Was that the principle of your office, of your work from the very beginning? Because I also imagine for the new office it's almost like, okay, we are maybe starting in the competition, but then whatever it's coming we are taking it to survive, because right now it is like very optimistic and positive attitude, like to be able to deny certain clients and certain projects, if especially with the when you disagree with the idea for the project or with the client. I mean, this is great to have this this chance, but it means that you worked for it for a couple of years. But how was in the beginning?
I think it was hard to articulate those principles on the very beginning because we had some education, but the education wasn't that straightforward topics. We were picky by some natural because at least you can feel a little bit what's good and what's not good for things you like.
Hmm.
And we like cities. We like urban environment. We like alive cities, healthy cities, safe cities. And for instance, the shopping centers on the fields outskirts of the cities are against those beautiful things. They are destroying those things we like, and I cannot sell my soul for such a thing. I know that it's evil and it's completely wrong.
But that's another feature that we can add for architects to be picky and resistant.
On the other hand, we are not like left-handed oriented architects. So we do work for very commercial developers. We do work for private companies, same as for public sector. And I think that's also necessarily to have to develop your own opinion while experiencing both sides, private and public.
Hmm.
And but always to keep in mind that you are the leader of the dialogue. Of course, they are
Not the budget.
not the budget, but the dialogue. And the leader of the dialogue doesn't mean that you are dictating some things. You are still pushing forward, but the dialogue, and the dialogue is absolutely necessary. For instance, now we are leading a dialogue about the green roofs. That the green roofs should be on each of our projects because they are important for the biodiversity, the keeping the water, calming down the buildings, etc., etc., etc. And it's hard because it's more expensive, and the developers doesn't like the extra costs. And we are not always successful, but we are leading the dialogue, and we have within past, I would say, 5 years, enough arguments and even the expertise how much the green costs and what's the benefit and what's the all the problematic while leading the dialogue with the clients and with our suppliers. We have enough arguments to slightly be like 70% successful on the topic.
Hmm.
So that's our role, and it's not like to scream in the media that developers are wrong and those are right, and I don't know what. We just have to very resistantly and very, how to say, what was the word we started with, responsibly
Responsible.
lead and actively lead the dialogue to achieve the best.
Not to create more conflicts. There are enough conflicts, maybe in architecture and in the city. Yeah. All right. Great. You work a lot in Czechia and Slovakia, in these two markets the most. If you could change one thing in the market or in the process of building, what is the most frustrating part for you? What would you change in the process of design if you have such a power?
I don't know if there's something frustrating. The frustration is something what I'm trying to avoid from my vocabulary. But I think it's not the topic of the Czech or Slovakia or Poland or Germany or UK or US.
Hmm.
I think it's a general problem that many projects we are working on as architects, and not only our studio, but generally speaking, are not leading to the completion. That there are so many aspects they could cancel the project. That's like shift of the government. That's like increasing of the price of the materials. What's most recently is happening.
Mm.
There's a weather. I don't know what. So
Always
so
something.
always something, and that could lead to some kind of frustration, but thanks god there's always some project under construction. We are constantly on the construction site since 10 years, that we are constantly building something or transforming something. I would say now that's that's the decision maker. We are at the end of the day always happy.
Yeah. Are you able to say the percentage, like how many
I don't
buildings?
know, but
Is
the
it
majority
50-50 or?
it's even higher. I would say
Mhm.
it's, but I don't know now. The projects we have recently on the table, almost all of them are going to be built. But if you're gonna ask me, in the next 5 years, I fear that maybe there are some hidden dangers.
Well, of course, in every project that is left and unbuilt, there is a huge knowledge, and you
Yeah.
always, like designers, always learn from it as well. But of course, that's something that will never be really shared or published, or will not get so much attention. And it's incredible, like there is a small percentage of the buildings that are being built in the world or transformated, and there is so much, way more, it stays on drawings only.
On the other hand, it's maybe good because
Yeah,
not each project from each architect is worth it to be.
definitely, but we can learn on somebody else's mistakes, which is actually the best. It's the best lesson.
A little bit selfish, but yes. But on the other hand, as you said, each project is a lesson, and we are, as far as we hopefully still young architects, we are still learning. And
But don't you think it's gonna be always this feeling of like keep learning? It will be never really.
yes, it has to be done. Once you feel that you know everything, you should quit the profession.
That's a good sentence. Yeah.
Maybe the last one.
That's a very good ending, to be honest. I'm glad that we sort of bite at least a little bit this wide topic of the role of the architect. I hope in some time we will like talk again and reflect, and let's see what's gonna change. Maybe you're gonna become less rational, more emotional, who knows. But thank you so much for the conversation.
Claudia, thank you very much, and all good with your podcast and professional life.
Thank you. All right, dear lovely listeners, thank you so much for surviving till the very end of the episode. I hope you really enjoy my talk with Ondrej Chybik. I think a good summary would be that one of many roles and challenges for architects is to start or keep the dialogue through the activism, through the responsibility, sometimes through being picky, as it was said, and resilient, but at the same time through being sensitive and open, because as Ondrej said, the architecture reflects the society, and that's the sentence I'd like to leave you with. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think about the episode and what are your thoughts about the role of architects. You can let me know via my social medias as Instagram. The profile is called as the podcast, so it's Architektura Powinna. I know, very catchy for non-Polish listeners. You're welcome. And there's also a Facebook page. I know who uses Facebook in this modern world, but yeah, you can find me there too, the same name. All right, time to finish. Have a great day, guys, and see you in the next episode.